From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Elon Musk completes his $44 billion takeover of the social media site Twitter. But what are his plans for it? Plus, listeners write in on school test results and U.S. aid to Ukraine. Welcome, I'm Kyle Peterson with the Wall Street Journal. We are joined today by my colleagues, columnists Alicia Finley and Kim Strassel. Happy Friday to you both. After a tempestuous business courtship and a lawsuit in Delaware court, Elon Musk is now this week the proud owner of Twitter in a $44 billion deal. And Alicia, this is the guy who built Tesla and SpaceX. But could this be Elon's biggest challenge yet?
So Elon Musk, I like to think of him, he's foremost a financial engineer. He has software background and computer engineering, but he's really kind of an entrepreneur and ideas man. And this goes back 30 some years when he started kind of innovating, went to Stanford to get a PhD, but dropped out and decided that he would much more rather go into business and develop something. And he's been impatient, so to speak, throughout his career. He's developed new startups, and Twitter isn't so much a startup, but a kind of a renovation project, a fix-it-up project. You know, if you go you buy a home, a fixer-upper, and that's kind of what Elon Musk is doing right now. I mean, Twitter's got a lot of political problems, insofar that the political right has criticized it for censoring conservative speech, especially on climate, on COVID, but also if you recall the Hunter Biden laptop story that the New York Post had. But it also has a lot of financial problems, bleeding money. It is not profitable. Or I'll put it this way, it's not necessarily losing users, but its growth has stalled out. Its cost structure is not sustainable at this point. I think the owners, or Musk actually had suggested or floated a 75% cut to the workforce, or at least he had said that privately. He later walked that back. But it needs serious repairs, both, morale repairs, political, in terms of how they go about, censoring content, but also in terms of a financial repairs. And in that respect, I think actually Musk may be uniquely situated for this job in terms of turning it around. I mean, we've really seen with going back to that point, Tesla, which was, by the way, junk rated not long ago, several years ago, and it was struggling financially. And it actually found a way, and maybe this is partly because of investor confidence in Elon Musk, and he was able to float equity to raise money to keep Tesla kind of when it was, on basically running on fumes. He combined Solar City, which was his solar panel startup, with Tesla, which kind of helped save Solar City from otherwise what many believed would be a bankruptcy. And I think he's being brought in, or he's deciding to come in and hoping to achieve basically the same goal, but also with more of a political goal of encouraging discourse on the web, which has become very polarized in recent years.
I find him a little bit hard to read, Kim, because sometimes he describes himself as a free speech absolutist. But a problem if you are the owner of a platform like this is, I think, free speech absolutist views include a lot of things that other users, regular everyday Americans who are on Twitter talking about politics or football or whatever, find pretty distasteful. And advertisers, doubly so. Advertisers don't want to be next to some of the things that you see on Twitter, much less some of the things that you see on some of Twitter's less moderated competitors. And to that point, it was interesting. Elon Musk this week put out a statement, and it's a letter to Twitter advertisers. I'll just read part of it. He says, in the relentless pursuit of clicks, much of traditional media has fueled and catered to polarized extremes. But he says that the opportunity for dialogue is lost. That's the point that Alicia was referring to earlier. But then he says this: Twitter obviously cannot become a free-for-all hellscape where anything can be said with no consequences. In addition to adhering to the laws of the land, our platform must be warm and welcoming to all, where you can choose your desired experience according to your preferences, just as you can choose, for example, to see movies or play video games, ranging from all ages to mature. Kim, I think that's interesting for a couple reasons. One is that he is using that language, warm and welcoming, that I find a lot of the things that are taken off of Twitter would not be warm and welcoming, and a lot of things that stay on Twitter are not warm and welcoming. But he also seems to be hinting at maybe his solution to this problem, which is that people can choose according to their preferences. So maybe you could add some Twitter dials where people can choose what level of expletives they want, what level of nudity they want, what level of anti-vax material they want to see. And you can choose your own Twitter, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the really important thing here is that Elon Musk has made clear that, as Alicia said, the business model as it is has stalled out and that there's going to have to be some big changes. One thing just on the free speech part of this, I think sometimes this actually gets overstated. When you listen to Musk, he has talked about the fact that there are things that are protected speech and things that are not. And, you don't have necessarily an unfettered right to have child pornography running around on Twitter. And yes, everyone would agree that that is a problem. To the extent that this debate has been going on, it's been about the heads of Twitter, the former heads of Twitter, censoring information that isn't in any way a problem in terms of the Constitution, but rather because it has offended some people largely on the left. And an excellent example is what all the social media companies did over Hunter Biden's laptop in the run up to the election. So I don't necessarily think the problem is quite as huge as some people on the left are now screeching about. But yeah, he's going to have this incredible opportunity. Maybe you have different streams that you sign up to, or as you said, different dials. Interestingly, Musk has said that the purchase of Twitter brings him closer to what he calls X, which is this app he wants to develop that would combine messaging and video and payments and commerce. It's clear he's got a whole new vision, at least for some things. The advertising letter was important because you do need to reassure the advertisers. Look, the basic financial goal of Musk here is to grow the audience. He has very ambitious goals for getting more people to sign up for Twitter and grow advertisers to monetize that. And so he's got to reassure those advertisers now. And we'll see how he handles the different speech things. But I'd be more curious to see where this goes from an innovation standpoint.
Well, I agree with Kim that there is room for Musk to make clear that dissenting views on climate, to take one example, are not something that Twitter under his watch is going to label as misinformation and throttle down, limit its reach, or take people off the platform for that. I mean, I think that that's the kind of action that a lot of conservative critics of Twitter have wanted. On the other hand, I still think he is going to face the same dilemma that the owners of all of these sites face. And I have used this example before, but Instagram is a platform that just bans nudity. And it's not that it's necessarily illegal content. It's that Instagram wants to be a place where parents feel safe and comfortable letting their teenagers hang out and send pictures to each other. And so that's the policy that they've made, understanding that they're a quasi media business. And so I think Musk will face a lot of those same questions of speech that falls within the constitutional sphere, but is not necessarily the kind of thing that Twitter users want to see coming across their work computers in the middle of the day when they're tweeting things about the political debate or the football game to their friends. And so, Alicia, I mean, it's a balance, and it will be fascinating to see how Musk navigates this. But at least I will say it is good to see a private sector initiative to try to tackle this problem. There have been other proposals, especially on the right lately, that the FCC or the FTC, the federal government, get involved in some way and require social media sites to have some certificate showing that they don't moderate content in a biased manner. And I would much rather have the private sector kind of figure out a way to deal with this.
Right. And I think in that this is probably in Twitter's best interest, given that Republicans are likely to take control of Congress, or at least the House, in November. And you can imagine there will be a lot of big tech hearings and subpoenas about how they monitor and moderate content on their platforms. Let's be honest, I think the Republicans are going to probably treat Twitter with some kid gloves now that Musk has taken control, and maybe instead, be a little harder on Facebook, or Meta, as it's now called, Google, and the other platforms. And I think Twitter will escape some of the scrutiny that otherwise has been experiencing under the current leadership for its censorship decisions. Not that the Republicans probably won't continue to investigate some of the censorship and why people like Alex Berenson have been kicked out and what happened, whether the Biden administration intervened in that decision, and to the extent it did, we got some evidence from lawsuits showing that. But I do think it will shield Twitter to some extent from the political opposition and the political retaliation that could come in a Republican Congress, especially if Republicans gain the White House in 2024. You recall, Donald Trump tried to or suggested rewriting parts of Section 232 to limit the liability protections for these big tech companies if they censored content. So, going back to my earlier point, Musk provides a shield for this company and probably could also bring in more investors if they buy into his business plan. And to Kim's point, I'm actually kind of excited about the Twitter could be innovating because one of the problems that the company has had is that it really hasn't done anything outside of its lane. It's kind of floated some ideas about charging or has implemented some ideas like charging for certified accounts, but it really hasn't, expanded into other business lanes like some other big tech companies have done, like Apple, Google, and Amazon. Some have gotten into the cloud, robotics, artificial intelligence, whereas Twitter has been kind of, trapped in its own Twitterverse. And I really think that the solution to Twitter's problems really is growth right now.